I have tried everything getting seeds to grow here, and yet there's one plant growing on the ranch that I've never seeded, I've never watered, it's native, and these things are only 3 weeks old, and they're edible. I think these are gonna have a major role in me establishing my desert forest. Just 3 weeks ago, I was walking in this spot as rainwater was pooling on this inner lip of my terrace. I have amended the soil here, but I've never planted anything. And today, it's exploding with life. And aside from this Arizona poppy, which is beautiful, we have Palmer amaranth. Palmer amaranth, Palmer amaranth, and it just goes on and on and on. I know this terrace looks like a bunch of rocks with some sand mixed in, but I actually spread 11 cubic yards of horse manure over 3,000 square feet. That's enough to raise the soil organic carbon, the SOC, from just over 0.5% to over 3%, and maybe as high as 4%. For desert soil, that is a huge leap. But if you don't know what SOC is, those numbers don't mean anything. So here's why that matters. Soil organic carbon is the base of soil health, like the foundation of a house. To grow a desert forest here, I need that solid foundation of carbon stored in the ground. The tricky part is carbon doesn't automatically stay. When we've added manure or mulch, microbes eat the easy carbon, the sugars and the starches. But as the microbes breathe, much of that carbon is released right back into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. This quick, short-lived form of carbon is called label carbon. That's where Palmer amaranth comes in. It's a super fast grower that pulls carbon dioxide from the air and nutrients from the soil. If I let it just run wild, the carbon in its tissues would mostly escape once it dies. But if I chop and organize it as mulch, the story changes. Instead of off-gassing, much of that carbon goes back into the soil food web, feeding fungi, building humus, and sticking to soil particles. That's how carbon gets stored longer, which is critical for building healthy soil. I'll be the first to admit that the growth here is modest. So even though I don't have fields of Palmer amaranth, there's maybe 100 plants here and most of them are small, it is a start. I did the work to build this terrace and to add the horse manure, the carbon. But I've never planted a seed in this spot and I've never once irrigated it. This plant is telling me it wants to grow right here and it wants to thrive. I can partner with it or I can fight it. Life out here is really hard. If any plant wants to cooperate with me, I am all in. And letting this native colonizer stay for a while comes with real benefits. Palmer sends roots down fast, and when those roots die, they are little channels for rainwater to soak in faster and deeper, and those roots leave behind more carbon. Microbes use that fresh organic matter, and remember that organic means carbon, to unlock the minerals already in the soil, making them easier for plants to use. Even desert plants don't want full sun all the time. Shade protects young seedlings, and mulch keeps soil temperatures 20 and even 40 degrees cooler in the summer. That means less water evaporates from the soil, which means there's more water at the root level, and it's overall a friendlier home, a much friendlier home for microbes. That's the real lesson here. Palmer amaranth is more than a weed. It requires management. But when it's managed, it can act like a carbon pump, turning a weedy patch into the first step of soil regeneration. This is the south face of the North Dam. And look what we have growing up here. Palmer amaranth. Almost all of that is Palmer amaranth. Except for that one bush over there that is stinging serpent, and you really do not want to touch that one. Here's Palmer amaranth growing in the dirt bathtubs. This dirt bathtub gets the most water of any on the ranch, and not coincidentally, it is covered in green. We have Lechugia, Side Oats grama, I haven't identified that purple ground cover, that purple flowering ground cover. No Palmer in this particular bathtub. Oh, I lied. I believe that's it right there. Maybe I'm wrong. And by my shade wall, we have this stuff growing, and then looky here. But here's where the Palmer's really growing. It's already off to a really good start. So we'll give it another week or two, and then it's got to get chopped. One of the things that I like to share with people is how I'm able to balance life at the ranch versus my life at home. Life at home is really centered on living my best life with my family, running my business, and taking care of myself. And a key way I'm doing that is with this rowing machine from Overton. I structured this into my life to where I just use it 3 times a week because it's so easy. I put this rowing machine in my local gym. Although that comes with the obligation of sharing it, it's simpler for me. Jiu-jitsu is a good workout in some ways, but it's not enough cardio. So by doing the rowing machine, I can make sure that I hit my cardio requirement before I go home. If I get on this machine, the best value it adds to me is just telling me exactly how hard to push. But I had a good conversation with my buddy Mike. He loves the games. He's a gamer. He loves coming over here and having a reason to pull the machine. And the other great thing about the rower too is I use this with my dad. He's in his mid-70s and has the bionic man, shoulder replacements, knee replacements. But you know, one exercise he can do is he can row. Anybody, any stage of life, nearly any amount of injuries can get on a rowing machine and get a good workout. There are classes, there are games, YouTube, Netflix. Do your own workout. You can literally choose anything. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code that you see on the screen. That will take you to Overton Interactive, where you can learn more about the machine. Your support of my sponsors, or even your serious consideration of my sponsors, is what makes this channel possible. Without my sponsors, the trees, Daniel, the bulldozer, all the things that go into making this desert forest reality cannot happen without your support. Thank you to Overton for sponsoring the episode. And now, back to Palmer amaranth. Palmer amaranth is an amazing plant, and that is why farmers around the world hate this plant. They call it pigweed. They call it a superweed. It's even called careless weed because it grows without any care at all. If you want any proof about how much people hate this plant, just go right to the comments section. You will get all the negative feedback and everything that everybody hates about Palmer amaranth in the comments. I guarantee it. If corn and soybeans were the Batman, Palmer amaranth would be the Joker. When this plant establishes in farmers' fields, it can reduce yields by 50 to 75%. That is money coming out of the farmer's pocket when this weed shows up. And that's because Palmer amaranth is mean in every possible way. It's allelopathic, meaning it shoots temporary poison into the soil to harm nearby plants. It's also super talented at turning water into photosynthesis. It is world-class at finding any moisture and turning it into rapid growth because its roots spread far and deep. It resists herbicides really well, which is why it's considered a superweed. And because each plant sets hundreds of thousands of seeds, it colonizes areas exponentially. After Palmer amaranth establishes in a farmer's field, it uses the extra water to grow taller than his corn and soybeans, which harms the yields even more than getting the water first. And then once it's nice and tall, its woody stems clog the machines that the farmer's using to harvest his crops. So why am I tolerating a villain on my ranch? Well, one reason is that it's a native villain. I didn't plant it, it just showed up here. But also, my biggest challenges out here are water and building soil organic carbon. I have a plant that wants to grow, it doesn't need any water from me, and it'll lock away soil organic carbon faster than any other option. It is my best chance to prevent all of the carbon that I added as horse manure from escaping as gas. If I had neighbors that were farming, I would have to seriously rethink this idea. But I don't have neighbors. I'm in the most isolated spot in Texas. Almost nobody is out here and nobody at all is farming. So for my situation, it makes way more sense to partner with Palmer amaranth than it does to fight it. But as always, context is really important. I'm not encouraging the world to grow Palmer amaranth. It just makes sense for me and my project. Amaranth is the name for a group of plants that have been grown for thousands of years as food. People around the world eat amaranth in two main ways. The tiny seeds, which can be cooked like quinoa or ground into flour. It's often called an ancient grain. And then you have the tender leaves, which are eaten as a cooked green. Grain amaranths like Amaranthus cruentus or Amaranth caudatus were staples in Central and South America because of their high protein and mineral content. Palmer amaranth is edible too. Its young leaves can be cooked like spinach and the seeds can be eaten, but there are some important limits. Palmer can accumulate high levels of oxalates and nitrates, especially in hot, dry, or fertilized soils. Basically, exactly where all the Palmeranth is growing on the Dust Ups Ranch. It is not safe to eat in large quantities. And while the seeds are nutritious, they are much smaller and much harder to gather than the larger seeded amaranth species that were developed as food crops. Compared to other amaranths, Palmer's leaves tend to be tougher and less palatable. By the way, I learned that this is the test for Palmer amaranth. This is the petiole, this long stem, and if you can fold the leaf back and it's significantly longer, that's probably Palmer. But it is edible, and it does genuinely taste good. And I really like eating and using food that I can find on my ranch. That's why I thought making a chimichurri would be fun. It uses a limited quantity, making it safe to eat, but it still lets me enjoy food that I can walk outside my door and forage. You wanna try amaranth?
Yeah, try it. Let me come in here so keep the bugs out. A little bit of bitterness, kind of like almost like parsley.
Yeah.
Like what is in chimichurri.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever done it. When I was little, I chewed up grass before. I mean, I was a farmer, what do you expect? But you get that chlorophyll flavor. And
to me, it tasted more like arugula a little bit without the heat.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. That it's got a little sharp bitiness without the heat. Yeah, that's a.
So I figure I'll just I'm gonna chop the garlic. I'm gonna use olive oil. Are you a vegetarian or anything? I got you a ribeye, so I hope you will partake. You do not have to eat the chimichurri, so don't feel obliged because I'm gonna make it hot.
Okay.
Add a little bit of salt and some lime. Can I get you to try amaranth chimichurri?
Yes, I will absolutely try it. Oh, it's very garlicky.
It's very garlicky.
It's just missing a steak.
Well, we have the answer to that. I'm trying to just warm them up a little bit before I put it on this scorching heat.
Thank you, Shaun.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
I'm glad y'all like it.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, it's good.
Cool.
You need to come up with some name for this. Like, this is your concoction. You need to come up with a name with it. The dust up sauce.
The dustachurri. Once we get the dozer back up and running, which should be sometime next week, it's because of a tension problem in the tracks, I'm hoping we can do the final grading on this swale. And the key thing we've discovered building this thing is the clay pockets that dominate most of its length. I believe I have a type of clay called Montmorillonite, and that clay is really common in semi-arid areas. One of its key distinguishing features is when it hydrates laterally rather than vertically. And that means it's going to be hard to get the water in the soil. If I can get water in the ground, in clay, deeper than 2 feet, it's more or less, I'm oversimplifying, but it's basically permanent water. It's out of the evaporation zone, but it's close enough to the surface that plants can get to it. Enter Palmer amaranth. Its root structure is very similar to a tree, where it's very wide at the top and then it drills down. It's called biodrilling. And Palmer amaranth, because it's such a hardy pioneer, can break clay soils just like this. What I'm hoping to see is that Palmer amaranth colonizes this area after the final grading, breaks up the clay that we didn't get to with the dozer, and as water pools in this area, as I've already seen on the rough cut, I know that we can get this area established with the right kind of plant and get the subsurface hydrated. Because even after the Palmer dies, those little root channels remain in the soil where water can percolate down. And because Palmer amaranth can send its roots, I need to double check this. I will put it on the screen if I'm wrong, up to 6 feet deep. That's putting water in the soil exactly where I need it. And even after the Palmer dies off, that water is still there. There is one major disadvantage to Palmer amaranth, and it's massive seeding. One plant can produce 500,000 seeds, which is probably the explanation for why this terrace is covered in Palmer amaranth, even though I've never grown it. And what I want to do is I want to prevent it from seeding. It's extremely likely to form a monoculture, which I don't want. I only want this as a cover crop. And if you look very closely here, I believe this is likely to be starting a seed head, and it's time to prune it. That'll also give me an extra 2 weeks of growth and more biomass to put on the soil as mulch. The female plants set their seed heads, and they're very, very spiky. I want to leave at least a couple of layers so that this plant continues to grow. One thing about Palmer is it's not spiky except for the seed heads, which they are definitely spiky, that you will not be working with the plant without gloves. So I think I'm pruning it reasonably well. I'm just going to use the plant's own material to mulch it. And I'm not doing chop and drop. I'm doing chop and organize. I'm taking the mulch and I'm putting it mostly on the south-facing side just to take as much stress off the plant as possible. And since I probably won't have time to do this again, anything that looks like it might set seeds before I come back, I'm going to attack. I'm trying to leave several nodes near the bottom, and the more I chop this, the more it's going to speed up the decomposition, which I definitely need. Dust Up's content doesn't have to end here. If you want to see updates on the plant growth, the terraces, the big swale that you just saw, that is all available when you join Team Dust Ups. Go to the link that you see in the description or scan the QR code that you see on the screen. Otherwise, I will see you next week.